This year, our commitment is to provide training and build systems in place. So I know that it is hard, like nuts and bolts, the finance side, the numbers, that's not for everybody. But at the same time, if you do not understand those things, it will be hard for you to really figure out why me or the management or your office manager, why they are making the decisions they are making. So I think it's a key not just for the doctors or the practice owners. If you are somebody, some other practice owners, you're watching this, is completely, you have to completely understand some of the basic fundamentals of dental business. So with this series, what I have created is a couple of few modules, and we go over each module. It's very basic and simplistic. My goal is that somebody be hired today to be a front desk person or be the hygiene assistant. From that person to a seasoned doctor who has been, owning a practice for maybe last 25 years, but they have some difficulty understanding some of the cost side, some of the income side. They can understand the nuts and bolts of dentistry, where is the money is coming from and where is the money going, and how do you make a profit, what are the opportunities. So I have 3 modules ready right now. The first module, we talk about the growth, profitable growth, why it is so important to have profit and growth together, and what I call the cycle, virtuous cycle of growth and profit. And then compared to the other side of the spectrum is the death spiral led by the decline and loss. Then the second module, we talk about the sources of income. We have only 3 sources of income in dental business, and we'll go over that in detail, how you can impact each source. Then the third module we have is the expense side, and that gets complicated. Very few people in business truly understand their cost. And it is critical, if you are a manager especially, to understand the cost. What is the direct cost? What is my direct cost in providing the product and services? What is my fixed cost, which drives a lot of decision for the long term? If the business has a lot of loans, a lot of debt, a big office and a lot of commitment, you have a lot of new equipment, then your fixed costs are very high, and that will impact a lot of decisions you will make. Then the third cost we call is the indirect cost, like what is the other related supporting cost that really enables us to provide dentistry in the first place. So that is the third module, and hopefully you will enjoy them, and I will keep it very simple. And with that, let's get started. So this is the series Profitable Growth in Dentistry, and as we discussed earlier, we will have 3 modules. So module 1, virtuous cycle or a death spiral, and that's one we are going to talk about right now. Let's get started. So this is the key learning, why any business must pursue both profit and growth at the same time, and how do you create a virtuous cycle of profitable growth compared to a death spiral, which is driven by loss and decline. What is the use of business profit? Then finally, what are the key takeaways from this module? So in our society in the US, profitable growth is the only known way to build a long-term sustainable business in a market-driven economy like US. If you live in Russia or China, a lot of socialist countries, their government plays a major role, and for decades they can take loss and still be in business. That is not the case in our society in market-driven economy. So let's look at a company or the companies who have low profit margins or no profit and no growth. These are typically mature companies, you will see in the utilities, which may be regulated by the government, so they kind of decide their profit margins. You have the retail consumer goods. These are companies typically very boring. They do not attract top talents, and ultimately they will go bankrupt in the long run if growth does not come if profit does not grow. And you will understand why I'm saying they will go bankrupt later on. Then you have second category, there is no profit but high growth. And you are all familiar with these kind of businesses. These are young startups, high technology business, new business model. These are often very risky and failure rate is very high. However, these are very exciting places to work for, and they attract really high caliber top talent from all over the world. So early days of all the tech startup, Amazon, Uber, Tesla, Facebook, Google, they were all high growth companies with a lot of loss in the beginning. Amazon, even today, they do not claim that they will make profit next quarter. Ultimately, survivors have to become highly profitable. Otherwise, they will go bankrupt. So again, the failure rate is very high in this business model. Silicon Valley is full of dead companies who raised a lot of money and never grew, never became profitable. So we got two sides, no profit, no growth, there is no future. No profit, high growth, they will survive. If they survive, they will be very profitable. Let's see, in dentistry, how do you create a virtuous cycle of growth and profit? The case, you have what you call in dentistry, they call de novo practices, the practice which starts from scratch. So you have a new practice opens in the town from ground up. But this is a difference. From day one, they have a great team of clinicians and support staff. So now every patient is a new patient, right? So let's see the process, how does it flow. You have the front office, so every call that comes in, it's handled flawlessly by the staff. So right here, you have all the calls coming in and they handle perfectly. Now from there, they made the appointment. If it is in the hygiene chair, they go in the hygiene or they go to the doctor's side. Again, you got optimal experience and great clinical outcome both in hygiene and the doctor's chairs. The third part, the treatment planning was done right. The part of the cost was presented correctly. Copay was collected. Next appointment was made. And people even ask for the reviews, which is key, right? So everything is being done right here. Finally, doctors or hygienists or front staff, they made the post-care call. So patient, is happy, very happy, highly satisfied patient. So in this case, this patient is guaranteed to return. Whether it is the treatment or recare, they will come back. And very soon they become your established patients right here. Not only that, this patient, since everybody will know, she will talk about this practice. So you start sending a lot of referrals. And referral is the lifeblood for the new patient for our practice, any practice. So in this case, the dollar actually going in the trash is very low wasted dollars. And this is the hallmark of a successful practice that is building a phenomenal business for the long term. Let's look at the dollar term. So how do you create, how this business is creating a virtuous cycle? So let's look at the year one. They started from scratch, right? When they started, they had zero income. So very small income. End of the year, they built a small business. So you have a revenue here, money coming in, money going out. This is all the money coming in. So they made a small profit. Now the key is what happens with this profit. Let's take a look. So uses of profit. You add capacity. You add more chairs. You can add more hours, right? So you add capacity, more staff. They buy new technology. You invested in skill development, more marketing. So a lot of these things, but most of the profit will go towards growth. So we are putting 100% of the money that we made this year into growing the practice for the next year. You repeat the same formula for next 5 years, next year 2 through 5. Just keep growing, reinvest in the business. Let's see down the road. Now it's year 6 onwards. So business is larger now. Your income is larger, much larger. Your expense in proportion, you held down to the expense and made a bigger profit. Now this is where the magic starts to happen. So what do you do with that profit now? You do all of the above. You do all of these things when you're making all this money. So definitely you're doing all of that. Plus, now you have enough money left over for the team. So the management can offer 401k matching, give some profit sharing, some bonus, maybe take a nice vacation, offer health care. You can also start paying down the loan. And finally, owners can start taking some money home. And this is why anybody exists in business. You got to be able to reward the owners or the shareholders in the large business. So this practice is doing everything right, and it is on the path to greater growth. Now let's look at the second scenario on the other end of the spectrum. And you will see this all the time. In a lot of offices, you walk in, it's a very well-established practice with large patient pool and successful older doctor who just has different priority now, and last few years he has been neglecting his business. So they have not invested in the new facility, the carpet looks faded, the furniture looks worn out, there's no new technology. They have not even trained the staff on anything new in the last few years. So what it does, some of the staff who are young and ambitious, they will leave. An office team is no longer aligned around the common cause, purpose. So what happens in this business? Let's start here. So front office, frequently mistakes are being made in patient communication. Clinical staff, you have the mismanaged clinical experience. There are a lot of redos. If you have associate doctor, somebody new, they were never trained, they got some redos going on. And the hygiene department is complete chaos. Every hygienist has her own philosophy, and it's not working out well. The treatment planning part, estimates are often wrong. The schedule is not optimized, a lot of holes. Copay is not being collected, so you're sending a lot of statements, there's a lot of money in collections, a lot of overdue, over 90-day balance. So it's a mess. Post-visit, patients are often angry, dissatisfied, and they complain. Sometimes they don't complain, they just leave. So what's happening here is start losing long-established patients. Not only that, they talk. Patients talking in the community, and slowly the business is losing the goodwill. So you're losing long-established patients pretty quickly, and business is bleeding. Unfortunately, the doctor is the last person to know that business is not doing well, because it is a realization, and a lot of businesses never really understand that they got real problem on their hand. It's very common, and by the time owners realize that, it's kind of late. So this is the death spiral in dentistry. And let's look at the same mapping we did earlier. In this case, I'm starting at year 25. So let's say the doctor has been in business for 25 years. It's a large practice, very successful, and they're making a lot of money. Income is high, expenses are lower, a lot of profit here. What happens with this profit is determining the fate of this business. In this case, owner takes all profit home to pursue a high-flying lifestyle. So it is very common, don't be surprised. So all the money is going into owner's pocket. So a lot of ambitious and motivated staff start leaving. Patients can see the stagnant office, old chairs, paint on the wall, dated technology. It's very disappointing. So let's repeat the same thing going on for next 5 years. Things are not going well. the patients are leaving, business starts shrinking, expenses remain high. So this part, if you look at this starts to getting smaller and smaller. This is not really going small, just a little bit small, but it's still very high. So what will happen? The profit is going to get less and less each year. So when you play that game, this is what you have. Let's say 5 years from now is year 30 now. Size from large, it became a small or even medium or small. The revenue is much smaller, expense is still high. So this may be the first year the business actually lost money. So it lost money, and now the lot of doors are closing on them. If they have a bank loan, bank will call back the debt, or they will say, you got to meet these covenants. So death spiral accelerates. Unfortunately, most of the owners cannot be the turnaround guy. In most businesses, they have to replace the CEO when they have to do the turnaround. So this business needs a turnaround, and the current owner is just not going to be the right person to do the turnaround. So they have very few options left. They got to sell the business. Mostly, it's nowhere close to what it was here. So they're taking a big loss in the valuation of the business. So if you have, let's say you can sell for $2 million here, by the time you get here, it may be whatever, $500,000, So big loss from between these two. So all the money he could have enjoyed, the owner, and it is not a good scenario. The fate of all the staff is hanging in balance because it will be a much smaller office. So business are often blind to loss going on, the leakage going on in their business. And that's what we call the money is basically going in the garbage if you look at earlier. All right, so let's look at the next, just the key takeaway from what we presented so far. Any business must pursue both growth and profit together. Both have to be together. There is no either or. One without other is not sustainable for long term. A growing business needs a lot of cash for the growth. And the cash comes from many sources. What we talked earlier, just the profit part. But a lot of time you have to take the loan, or owner have to bring their own money to the table to buy the new equipment or anything else. So it's not uncommon for owners to put money. For example, when we did the remodeling and expansion, we funded quite a bit of that from our own savings. So it's a lot of stake for the owners here. Improper use of profit can lead to path of business failure. As we saw earlier, if you take 100% of the profit home, you are in trouble. The business is going to get in trouble. And then finally, the biggest challenge in business is if you're successful and you're doing really well, you start becoming comfortable, and it gets you in trouble. So past success is absolutely meaningless in business, and it gives you a false sense of security. You feel entitled, and often people start neglecting their customer. That does not this no. The personal comfort, often employee benefits, that becomes more important. If you look at the auto industry and how unions create a lot of problem for the auto industry is a prime example. A lot of things happen. They forgot who the customer was. So in any practice, we have to look at that. Are we creating each day with our actions? Is this a path of virtuous cycle, or we are leading on towards a death spiral? What are the early indicators of death spiral? I mean, it's very hard to really look at early indicators, but they are there. You will know. And how can you stop it? Are there way? Of course, you can stop it. I mean, there is no. Sometimes it is too late when you are in deep trouble. You have already accumulated a lot of loss. Then it's hard to really turn around. But most of us can stop it, arrest that, and turn the business around. And these are tough decisions. Mostly it's management decisions. You have to let some people go who are not being productive. You got to start sometime from scratch, from a clean slate, like new protocols, new discipline. So This is my take so far on the profitable growth path, and hopefully you learned something. The next module, I'm going to talk about the income side of dentistry and how each of us play a role in that, and how we can grow the income side. When you're talking about the income side, if you look at the prior slides, we're talking about this bucket. How do you grow the revenue side? And then the third module will talk about the expense side. So our goal is always to grow this thing and lower this thing. All right, and hopefully you enjoyed that. I will see you soon on the other module.